It's funny if you look back in history, um, the narrative, the story that you're usually told is kind of the consequences of it. The World War or the usually a war. Whatever the whole like set of historical crises that are marked as the major turning points in history. Um, but if you actually kind of dig down, they're almost all financial. Like the actual context of the war, of the crisis, was the inability to actually have the capital necessary to solve these problems. I think you saw this in the Soviet Union. This is what Ayn Rand did really well in her book, was just kind of illustrate how the lack of autonomy of the individual just led to people making poor decisions and always just wanting to push the responsibility up the ladder and not being able to do anything without explicit permission, and how it just lets everything go to shit. Because she lived through that. She watched these disasters play out because everybody was just like, I don't know what to do. This isn't my responsibility. And it was like this contagion of like mental patheticism that just infiltrated everyone. And if there's a better way to describe today, I don't know it off the top of my head, because that feels like where we are. And that's just kind of, that's the end game of, we're literally, look at the problems that we are dealing with. Look at the billions of people suffering. Look at the lockdowns. Look at the destruction that has happened to the economy. And a huge portion of our population literally thinks that the biggest problem we have is a grammar problem. That we should figure out what are the proper pronouns to call each other, because everybody's going to commit suicide if you're not called the right one. That's fucking retarded. I'm sorry. It's just absolute idiocy. And when we're talking about like moving through a fourth turning here, I think the crazy thing is that in the next 10 years, so Weimar Republic is a great example, because when you look at the price of gold, very few people, everybody talks about like what the mark did, right? But when you read, when you kind of go through the history, was it When Money Dies? Is that the one? Actually, we were just talking about that, right? Yeah.
Right there. It's a good book.
And I listened and or read like 2 or 3 books on the same topic, so I couldn't remember which one. But that gold, the price of gold, went psychotic. That started to go through these crazy swings where it would swing way up when the when the mark would go through a period of inflation, and then it would absolutely crash. And it would be one of those situations where, like, as soon as there's a lot of movement, it's like a rubber band, right? Is that everything gets a bigger space of being overbought and oversold when your measurement, when the very metric you're using to determine how much value it's worth is fluctuating, is that all of your metrics are off. And the only, thank you, that graph. But yeah, you look at that, it like what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 times someone would said gold is dead. Like that, the shit has hit the fan, gold is worthless. And it obviously gets increasingly worse. And what we're looking at right now in the economy is we're getting shorter and shorter debt cycles. Fiat is dying. Like, fiat is dying right now. And that's what we're watching. The entire Western world is experiencing 8 to 10% government measured inflation, probably 10 to 20% real inflation. All the modern economies are experiencing that. And look at what's happening to everything that's less than the modern economy. Look at all the second and third world countries and what they're dealing with. Money is falling apart as a system. It was broken, and we've basically pushed it to its ends. And now we're in this situation where the 2 largest central banks in the world, the ECB and the Federal Reserve, are stuck in a place where they can make 2 decisions. They can send us into hyperinflation, or they can send us into a depression. That's not a good decision to have to make. It's their fault. They're the ones who led us here for their own profit and their own benefit and their own power during this whole thing. So, I hope that I can't wait until they die. It'll be great. But when you experience that amount of monetary turmoil and the political turmoil and the war that will inevitably, that has arisen from this, the crazy government responses and attempts to grasp onto their power, and their narrative is falling apart. As crazy as a lot of the people seem, what's funny is that the reason a lot of people seem crazy is because there are a lot of people who see it as crazy. That's actually a good sign. It's when nobody notices the crazy that things are really bad.
Yeah.
When the crazy is being openly talked about and challenged and ratioed, you're actually in a pretty decent spot. It feels nuts, but your trend is in your direction. And I think that's where we are in this whole mess right now. There is this corner that is building its way out of it. Like, I think the pieces of the solution exist. Bitcoin is going to benefit greatly from the monetary chaos. It will be crazy. It'll be like gold. It'll be like Bitcoin has been in the past. It'll 10x and 80% down, whatever. Like, I don't think that's done for any of the foreseeable future. Bitcoin is still Bitcoin. But if you've got a little bit of conviction and you can stand back and look at the big picture, there are opportunities. There's a new world being built.